Hi, this is Rob Bowron with Sharp College Football, and today we're going to talk some Buckeyes. Like we are closing in. This is number 3 in our projections, the number 3 Ohio State Buckeyes, and we are. I got to run. Once the recruiting was finalized back in late February. I had the projection model really all set up to run. I knew we were going to run the Challenger model that we had been running last year as a test, the one that you see this year that has the coaching and development field in for every team as well. And I ran it and then, really kind of, almost immedately after, some small period after, really started kicking off doing the previews on the Sharp College Football Twitter, where we're running through, a lot of the graphics that you see on both the team beta rank report that gets into the deep dive of, and the visual with the bar graphs of what that looks like for the year, for that one particular season. But then looking at, a lot of the metrics that come out of, the graphs that come out of the program report. And the program report gives you like over time going back to 2012, like how your team has performed on every metric that we track pretty much. And we started at 130. UMass, and we're at 3. And Alabama number 1 will be Friday. And this Ohio State one's going to wrap our Big Ten preview. So really excited. We've come, and I started beta rank just a couple, really a few years ago. Started Sharp College Football last year. Really, started doing videos this year. I feel like we've come a really long way. And for those of you that have been with us or, following, we really, really appreciate it. This is a labor of love for us here and for me at Sharp College Football. And it brings together two of my passions, football, college football, and math and doing modeling. And I'm a person of hobbies, so this sort of works. Anyway, let's do some Buckeyes. Let's cover them. So the Buckeyes really bounced back in a big way, with Ryan Day as the head coach last season. In his first season as the head coach, they finished out at number 2 in beta rank last year. Just a heck of a job by Day. In particular, he made a really good hire in hiring Jeff Hafley to run the defense. The defense in particular is what powered the Buckeyes to really rebound off of where they had been the year before. So they finished out last year at number 2. In 2018, they were at number 13. And while you're probably saying number 13 is not so bad. For Ohio State, where the expectations really are, I think around the program, number 13 is certainly not where they want to be. Not only that, the defense in particular in 18 was bad. And so they were able to really get it fully turned around last season, deliver a very good defense, last year. And Day, who, is an excellent offensive coach and was the offensive coordinator for that 18 team, did, actually improve on what was already a very good offensive score for what they had performed, what they put out there in 18. So all in all, if you were looking at his first year, and then also, how the Buckeyes have recruited under Day, as well as not having any of the off-field problems that Urban Meyer had. Day's first year with the Buckeyes can only come in with just excellent grades all around. And they are they are just crushing it in recruiting right now. But there are some questions. There are some things that we are, this offense is going to be something to see when they take the field. That said, there are some questions about the defense. They lose a lot. They have a new defensive coordinator coming on. Anytime you either lose a ton of production and or have a new play caller, that is going to introduce some uncertainty. When you have both happen, even as well as the Buckeyes have recruited and as solid as the coaching, really has been, and in particular, you have to call out, Larry Johnson, their defensive line coach, one of the absolute best in the business. Even though you look at it and say the Buckeyes are losing a ton of production on the defensive line in particular, they're going to have somebody, and Johnson's going to have somebody, really ready to be the next star on that defensive line. That said, we're going to have some questions. So we'll get into what our questions are, going through, but I'm excited to cover this team and talk about them, even though they may not play till the spring or late fall. This is a team that while we may talk about that the Pac-12, really almost. I say this. I finished up my undergrad at Arizona. The Pac-12 is mostly being ignored in this. Will they? Won't they play? Nobody's calling them to try to offer them tests to play. The big really conducting a playoff or a national championship this season without including the Buckeyes, and you can really argue. I mean, we just covered Wisconsin at number 4. The Badgers have a reasonable case on their own. Penn State, if Kurt Shiraka really crushes it, for them, as the offensive coordinator, I think they could, potentially be in the mix as well. For the Big Ten, with 3 top 10 teams in our beta rank projection, it feels a little like you don't necessarily, you can't, it feels a little silly to hold potentially a playoff without the Big Ten involved. Let's put it that way. So, I mean, college football is no stranger to controversy and crowning multiple national champions. And this year, I don't know. I mean, why don't we at Beta Rank and Sharp College Football, why don't we crown a national champion? Because unsurprisingly, it's often somewhat like the top team in Beta Rank at the end of the year sometimes is not the team that ends up winning the playoff. They're almost always a team in the championship game, but sometimes the best team that Beta Rank likes in the championship game doesn't have the best game in the championship game. So anyway, they were at 13 and 18, big step forward. A big part of their progression and their jump forward, they were number 1 in special teams last season, and they were number 1 almost all season in special teams last year. Just an excellent year on special teams for the Buckeyes. That is certainly something that if they want to maintain and this type of ranking at the top of college football, they absolutely need to keep that special teams train running. It may seem insignificant when you compare the size of the special team scores in Beta Rank to the offensive and defensive scores. That said, when you start talking about ranking this high, everything matters a lot. So the Buckeyes would do well to keep the special teams ranking in that 1, 2, 3 range. They're at 95. I can almost read my own handwriting. My handwriting is so bad. I just read a 9 as a 5. So they're at 95 and Bill Connolly's returning production. It's really heavily skewed. They have more coming back on the offensive side than the defensive side of the ball. So they've recruited well enough. They're going to offset some of that. Defense is more correlated with recruiting than returning production. That said, and I always feel like I always say this, the coefficient in front of returning production on a defensive projection model is not 0, right? I mean, it matters. It doesn't matter as much as it does on the offensive side. But the Buckeyes are at number 5 in recruiting on their 2-year, rolling recruiting average. I expect that to actually improve. I think that they've been recruiting even better, particularly this offseason under Day. So I like the Buckeyes have really set themselves up, and in a way that they're in a position that some other teams at the Big Ten and most of the other teams outside of the South, with the exception of, I think USC could do it if they really got it going, and I think with Dante Williams on that staff, out there recruiting, who's one of the, if not, I would argue Dante Williams is the best West Coast recruiter. Having him on staff could potentially get USC rolling back into the top 5 in recruiting. But the Buckeyes are really, positioned as, perhaps the only cold weather school in a way, likely to continue to challenge and to be able to recruit at this level. And that should give some comfort, I think, to some teams, that it can be done. That you can go out and execute a national recruiting strategy. You do have to win some football games to do that. And, the Buckeyes have certainly done that. You also have to hire terrific recruiters for your staff, and the Buckeyes have done that. But, unlike Penn State, or even Michigan, or, we just covered Notre Dame, who's in the Big Ten footprint, range. I mean, those teams are not in the range, of being able to just go out and they're not in that range of like a top 5 recruiting class more often than not. For them, there's going to be some work to get there, and they may have to have a lot of coaching wins. I mean, like having a little bit of a schematic advantage in order to win some games to attract more attention from recruits, and or really, go out and spend the money to try to get the top recruiters out there. But Ohio State's done a terrific job. I mean, you cannot argue that from a pure talent standpoint that they can't match up with anyone in college football right now. So let's, there's Ryan Day. I have these in here so that I can change it up a little bit. You don't have to look at my face so much, which is, I think, a win for everyone. Let's hop over and look at the metrics for them last season. Do I have the audio off? One second. Oh, it's just not playing. Well, let's cross our... Let me... in the literally never ending. So it is not showing. We're good. Thank you, Periscope producer, for not showing and not having any of the audio playing. So it turns out it is playing. So we're actually 100% good. No drop. Oh my God, there's a bunch of drop frames. I apologize for that again. My internet seems to have gone to a very bad place. So I'm gonna keep streaming. I would recommend swapping over to the YouTube if you want to catch this. I really apologize for this. I don't quite know what is going on with the internet at the moment. So looking at the Buckeyes offense, they were excellent last season, number 2 in beta rank. They were number 2 in drive efficiency overall. This offense finished right behind LSU in a lot of these metrics. So they were so good, in fact, and in particular, like they were number 1 for a good chunk of the season last year, ahead of even LSU, until LSU really caught a real strong push at the end and got it done. So they last year they were number 2 in drive efficiency, just excellent putting together long drives, to be able to put up points. Number 2 in explosive drives, and you can see here, this is scaled so that LSU is at 1. Here, I mean, you can see how close the Buckeyes were and just pure explosiveness to that LSU offense. That's amazing. I mean, this was an amazing offense last year. Number 3 in play efficiency. I mean, getting a real solid yards per play, controlling for opponent and field position. Number 3 in negative drives. Not a lot of, not a lot of 3 and outs. I'm gonna stop the stream here. Like I'm gonna cut that off. The internet just appears to be so bad that it's not workable right now. I'm gonna turn that off, and then you will catch it on the YouTube video. So we're just gonna keep going with the video here. The but the Buckeyes are a little interesting because they're a run first team, and even as we talk about like a lot of the in college football. And there's a lot of emphasis, in particular, like NFL analytics, and in emphasizing the passing game, right? That that it is the passing game first that is going to be able to allow teams to move the ball and put up points. That's true, with a caveat. College football is a little different. You can absolutely have a run first offense that's just lights out and excellent. And the Buckeyes did. They were so dominant running the ball last season. They actually profiled a lot more like a service academy running the triple option with the dominance of their run game. Number 3 in effective rush, number 31 in effective pass. Lots of ways to skin the cat in college football. You have some of the best offenses last season in Ohio State and Wisconsin that were really built behind dominant run games and excellent offensive lines. So they, I think a lot of the focus was on Justin Fields. There will be some continuing focus on Justin Fields coming into, this season. That said, I mean, the star of this Buckeye, offense last year really was the offensive line, which just had a dominant year. And Fields will be set up again behind them this year. So they're at number 5 in 2018. Very good again in 2018. Ryan Day has retained the play calling, even as he has become the head coach. I think that makes a lot of sense when you're really as good of a play caller as Day is. It's hard to give that up and hand that off to someone else. he seems to have, it last year at the very least, been able to handle his head coaching duties as well as the play calling pretty well. But number 3 overall in Pro Football Focus's grades for quarterbacks last year went to Justin Fields. In particular, his grades on just pure drop back passes were the best in college football. Of course, Burrow beat him out on a couple of other categories. But I mean, one of the things that I think, and Fields had an excellent year last year. I think one of the things that Fields could work on, and you likely saw it, in that Clemson game, coming into this year, is I think that because he had the dominant run game, he got a little used to holding the ball, because he wasn't often asked, and Ohio State didn't have to have, much of a short passing game. Fields was often holding the ball a little long. I mean, in particular, when Ohio State was trying to catch up to Clemson, and once Clemson switched into that tight front 3-3-5 to try to control the run game, and brought the safeties down a little bit, Fields was holding the ball just a little bit too long, and it made that Buckeye offense a little bit inefficient and hit or miss, because all of a sudden they were waiting for long passes and trying to hit only on those. And, there is some efficiency I think that this Ohio State team needs to pick up and at least have as a tool in their bag. And, in that Clemson game, and they absolutely, minus the turnovers, Ohio State really lost that game as much as Clemson won it. And I still think you have to give Brent Venables, the best DC in the business for my money. A tremendous amount of credit, because whenever you give Venables enough time to prepare, he usually has a great game plan. And he had one for Ohio State, and really frustrated Fields in that offense, quite a bit, as Ohio State found themselves behind and trying to catch up. They didn't have an answer because they hadn't had to play like that most of the season. They had been able to establish the dominant run game. They had been able to, sit back and take longer passes, and they didn't seem to have either in the scheme, the playbook, or, in Justin Fields, the ability to really look for some of the short passes that would have kept the chains running a bit more, as they tried to catch up. So I think that's something for Ohio State to certainly work on and look for, and something for Fields to really demonstrate the ability to do. Hit some timing passes, get through his reads a little more quickly than what he was doing there, because he will not always be, particularly once he gets to the pros, he will not always be behind a dominant offensive line run first, in a run first scheme that is able to dominate the line of scrimmage the way the Buckeyes were. So that's not going to be they absolutely are going to be able to do that this year, though. So they were at number 4 in Pro Football Focus's offensive line grades. Just excellent. I mean, their grades in for Fields were very, very good. As you can tell from their effective rush numbers, they were excellent in the run game as well. One of the interesting things here, though, is that they returned 3 of their offensive line starters for last year. The 2 remaining spots they have open, they have 3 former 5-star recruits vying to fill that position. So I fully expect this offensive line to be in the top 4 again, perhaps placing, number 1 or number 2 in Pro Football Focus's grades at the end of the season. They are really well set up on offense again. They're at number 65 in returning production on the offensive side of the ball. That gives them a good amount coming back. I really like what this Buckeye offense is potentially going to be set up for next season. It is certainly going to be fun to watch when they do take the field. On the defensive side of the ball, they were at number 5 in beta rank. This is a huge improvement, and a lot of credit goes to Jeff Hafley for cleaning this up. They were at number 46 in 2018. That defense was pretty bad in 2018. So some of the big, and you could look across this and see, some areas of really big improvement. Number 4 in drive efficiency, they did not give up a lot of long drives. Number 6 in explosive drives, they were able to contain big plays. Number 4 in play efficiency, absolutely able to control, yards per play, controlling for opponent and field position. Negative drives, again, excellent, forcing a lot of 3 and outs, and turnovers. 18 in effective rush. They certainly have some room to pick it up and clean it up here. They had an excellent secondary last season. They were very, very good against the pass. And that's part of what really allowed Chase Young to be very good as well. is that secondary was so good. It allowed the pass rush to be, to stand out. So when you combine an excellent, pass coverage unit with some very good pass rushers, you're usually going to be in a good place. And the Buckeyes certainly were last year. They, one of the difficulties here, and the place where we have a lot of questions about this defense, is they're at 115 in returning production. So they lose a lot off of this defense. And they have a new play caller coming in. This is such a terrific proto of Kerry Coombs. A real firebrand. He's got a lot of vinegar in him. He had been the defensive backs coach with the Tennessee Titans. Prior to that, he'd been the defensive backs coach with the Ohio State Buckeyes. And then, before that, I believe he was with Cincinnati. I think actually that Titans job was his first time coaching outside of the state of Ohio. But the big concern with Combs, and it's just mileage may vary. He hasn't been a play caller before at this level, right? I mean, not at the college level, not at the pro level. This is going to be his first time. His first time as the play caller is going to be on a team with legit national championship aspirations at Ohio State. So he's certainly a known commodity within the Buckeye program. They had a lot of faith and confidence in going out and making this hire, and you certainly, I think, with the track record that they had from hiring Jeff Hafley, I think you have to look at it and have some confidence that Day somewhat knows what he's doing. I mean, we'll see. I mean, if he nails this hire, then absolutely, right? I mean, then you're going to look at it and you're going to have a lot of faith behind whatever his hires are that come after. It's just mileage may vary. I mean, coming back in with 115 in returning production, a new play caller without play calling experience, this defense could be not. I mean, there's a chance that they could finish out lower, and that could likely push the Buckeyes out of, whatever national title contention looks like this year. So I think that with the way they've recruited, there's certainly a chance, that they could hit in this, top 10, right around in 5 range again. But there are a lot of unknowns, and that gives you probably a little more downside. Part of it is that they're up here already. There's probably more downside. I mean, certainly there's less upside. They're already near the top, but there's more downside to where this defense might finish out this year. If you started to look at the distribution. So like I said, anytime you get a new play caller, mileage may vary. Anytime you replace a bunch of production, mileage may vary. That said, the Buckeyes are going to be replacing this with just a mountain of really, really talented players. And the Buckeyes themselves, I mean, part of the reason I think they fell off a bit in 18 was their pass defense in particular really got bad. Combs being gone did not help. I think him being back, you can really expect that pass defense to be very, very good again. My expectation is, and personally, I would put them in that if they can finish out in that 6, 7, 8 range, with what this offense could be, I think, and with year 2 with Day and Fields working together, I think you're really looking at talking about, really a potential national championship contender again. So this should be a really, really fun team to see. But like we've talked about with a lot of these teams, like how we will know if the Buckeyes are going to, meet or exceed expectations. It's really going to almost entirely depend on the defense. I mean, some on the wide receivers too, but mostly on this defense. So let's hop over and take a look at the schedule. So the schedule, I mean, it is amazing to take a look at a team with 12 FBS games on the schedule, and their expected win total against that is over 11. That is I mean, we are absolutely projecting you to go undefeated when you look at a schedule like that, when you look at a projection like that. So 9 games in the Big Ten, we project them to have 8.26 wins. Not sure what the schedule is going to look like for whatever the Big Ten schedule ends up being. We really, I think if we were going through that Oregon game, the model's under projecting the Ducks. I would still have Ohio State as a little over a touchdown. I'd probably have them as an 8-point favorite on the road over the Ducks there. But that's the marquee game. And I actually had an opportunity to get tickets to that game in the spring. And I just thought, no, I don't really want to buy a plane ticket right now with what could be. And I'm glad I didn't. But if they end up going out to Eugene again, I certainly will get tickets to that game. But the rest of the schedule, I mean, the Big Ten, I mean, we talked about with Wisconsin, the fact that the Badgers miss the Buckeyes and they miss Penn State. That really helps them out. For Ohio State, what really helps them, again, is missing Wisconsin, in the regular season here. But then the fact that like a lot of the rest of the Big Ten East is taking a little bit of a step back, and the Big Ten West outside of with the Badgers is also potentially taking a little bit of a step back. So, if you go through the schedule, then, clearly Rutgers isn't somebody they need to be worried about. Iowa, so long as they don't turn the ball over more than 2 times, they should be fine against Iowa. Michigan State, the same, but Michigan State, the defense could be quite good with Scotty Hazelton there and Mel Tucker. I don't think all that much of Jay Johnson, their offensive coordinator. So I think that 28 points feels about right. The close game here, the game that the Buckeyes really actually have to show up and can't afford to have a bad game, a bad night on, is that Penn State game, on the road. They're only a 7-point favorite in that game. As we've talked about, if the offense can really, the bugaboo for the Nittany Lions the last couple of years with Ricky Rain as the OC has been the offense. If Shiraka can really get that offense going, this could be a little tighter, in particular if the Buckeyes are having to, figure out the defense, or if it's not clicking quite as well as you would like. This game could be tight, and could be down as low as 4 points. I think 7 feels about right for the distance that is still there between the teams, but, keep an eye on this one. The Buckeyes, if they finish, -1 on turnovers, could certainly lose this game. Nebraska, Indiana, I mean, they are games that the Buckeyes, but just don't turn the ball over 3 times. You'll be fine. Maryland, Illinois, not going to be close. Michigan, I mean, the Wolverines really do have to replace quite a bit here. They do have some stability at the coordinators with Gaddis and Brown, but Michigan's really has some work to do, I think, on schematically to get there, right? Michigan hasn't recruited so poorly that, I think that there is a talent gap. I think sometimes it gets overstated. There is also a coaching gap between Michigan and Ohio State that I actually think is more important. It's a heck of a lot easier, I think, for people to measure the recruiting. So people talk about that all the time. But the more important gap, I think, between the Buckeyes and Michigan is actually schematic. And that Michigan offense didn't take too much of a step forward under Gaddis in the first year. So it really has to they have to try to figure it out on the fly, replacing quite a bit coming into this season. I think that on its own, for Michigan, likely keeps them like this 2 scores behind the Buckeyes. Seems pretty fair. It could be, if the Buckeyes really gel on defense, it could be 20 points by the time that game actually rolls around. So that's the schedule that was. As you like when you project like the Buckeyes, you project to roll through a schedule like that most of the time. So let's wrap it up. Again, like if you're hopping over to YouTube and catching this, I really apologize for what is going on with the internet here. But we're excited to see this Buckeye team if and when they take the field. As we've talked about with many of the teams, what to watch, if you're watching, like the main thing here is, and it's going to be at all levels of this Buckeye defense, I think, is because they are losing so much production. What does the secondary look like? Does Combs have them ready to play? He's got an excellent reputation here, and I think a well-earned reputation. I expect that the secondary will be quite good. That will help Larry Johnson breaking in whomever his new potential star pass rushers are going to be there. But they didn't excel against the run last season, and that's an area for them to potentially clean up. And if they can do that, if they can clean up some of the run defense while also like being, they could afford to fall off a little bit and not be number 2 on the pass. if they clean up that run a little bit. So if they can finish with both the run and the pass in the top 10, they're actually going to be fine. Like they can make up, where they might potentially fall off and losing some of those great secondary players. If the run defense can take a little bit of a step forward from where they were last year. But I would really just, keep an eye on, the play calling and some of I expect it less to be, unless Combs turns out to be some wildly aggressive play caller and they end up, living by the blitz and dying by the blitz. I think that what you really need to keep an eye out for is, are they able, are they forcing enough 3 and outs? So just keep track of how many 3 and outs they're forcing in a particular game. That's going to speak well to their overall efficiency, that they are able to come off the bench with a plan. And then keep an eye on, if they're giving up long drives. If they manage not to give up big plays, are they then giving it up with long drives where they don't have the consistency, or they don't have the right play call to find a way to get off the field, and they're not able to use what should be very good. They should have excellent field position most all of the year, because that offense is going to put up points, and they are going to be, much like in this Buckeye defense last season was set up a lot like LSU. That LSU defense was number 1 against the pass. This Buckeye defense was number 2. You're mostly playing ahead with the offenses that they had. Having a great pass defense really plays into your hand there. So, but if they, for them, if they can, control the run a bit more too. Watch out how, see if they are able to control the run without having to bring any safeties down, or, if they're not giving up too many yards per play, because you can be susceptible to, against a decent team able to establish the run. And you saw this a little bit with Wisconsin. You can, give up some long drives in particular, because you can't find a way to get off the field, because you are consistently giving up enough yards for teams to be able to put together first down. So that's what I would watch. And then on the offense, if there's one thing to watch, it's just the pass catchers. Keep an eye on the pass catchers. They have some to replace there. Field should be great. The offensive line should be great. The running game should be great. It is a little bit of a question of, what do they have in the passing game? I fully expect, though, that they will have ample time to figure that out, because the run game should be so good. So let's close it off there. Come back tomorrow. Hopefully I'm going to figure out this internet thing, or else I'm going to, I don't know. I don't know that I have any. We'll see. I've fixed so many things to try to get this all in line to work. So thank you so much for tuning in. You can find all the stats you just saw and a lot more at sharpcollegefootball.com. I'm Rob Bowron. I'm the econometrician behind BetaRank. I tweet out from @BetaRank, and I also handle the tweets from @SharpCollegeFootball. We have a Pac-12 podcast at 12Pac Radio, and you can find all the back episodes of that podcast at sharpcollegefootball.com/12Pac Radio. We previewed in advanced stats the 3 FBS versus FBS games that are taking place this week. So tune in, check that one out, even if you're not a Pac-12 fan, because we put out an episode where we didn't talk Pac-12. So thank you again so much for tuning in. We will see you tomorrow when we cover Clemson, and stay safe out there.